If we're gonna have to go with her, I'd rather just get it over with overnight instead of having to drive out.
Of course. It's warm.
Because then it's.
Heather, how was Saturday night?
It was good.
Isn't it fun? It's a different slice of Carbondale than what we're used to.
Everything lovely party.
What was Saturday?
Doesn't know that, right? Unless he's in those conversations.
On the river. Did you go?
Not go.
Guilty of doing other stuff.
Did you go, Erica?
No, I went a couple years ago.
Yeah, I went last year. That's a lot of fun.
It was really fun.
I'll show you the pictures after the meeting, not on air.
Okay.
Good to go? All right. It being 6:01, I'll call the meeting to order. Kathy, will you do roll call?
Ben Baumfock,
Here.
Frosty Marriott, Dan Richardson,
Here?
Heather Henry,
Here.
Marty Silverstein,
Here?
Katrina Byers, Erica Sparhawk.
Here.
Okay, welcome back after 3-week break. Does anyone have questions on the consent agenda? You got it? Big deal about the Airbnb?
Yeah, I was just going to
agreement?
comment. That seems like a positive development.
Yeah. Win-win. Okay, anybody want to make a motion?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion by Ben, second by Erica. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay. Next is persons present not on the agenda. Is there anyone in the public who'd like to, there's Pat, who would like to address the board on something not on the agenda? Pat, you get to go first. You know the drill. 3 minutes. Be nice, and you can address your comments to me.
Okay.
Thanks, Pat.
My name's Pat Kiernan, and thank you, Dan. My address is 189 South 3rd Street, and I'm here to speak to a process you might have heard about, the issuance of the issuance of a building permit for 728 Euclid Avenue, and the appeal and the revoking of that permit. And I'll try to keep this short and fairly simple. What I tried to create with that design was a net zero energy shared household, so a household designed from the start to accommodate 4 unrelated adults. The permit application was submitted September 2016, approved in March 2017, and then appealed. The appeal questioned the compatibility of the design with the historic character of Old Town and claimed that the design would allow me to be in violation of the occupancy standards for single family. The appeal was heard on May 11th by the P&Z acting as the Board of Adjustment, and I believe that was improper. My understanding is that the town is required to maintain a Board of Adjustment, and P&Z members may be special alternate members if a quorum of Board of Adjustment members is not available. The town of Carbondale did not defend their decision to issue a permit, so at the hearing I was placed in an impossible position of defending a decision that I never made. And during the hearing, the senior planner claimed that she had not reviewed my permit to the character and purpose standards that were at issue with the permit. And to simplify it, the board determined that the design qualified as a single-family residence. They felt that the scale and mass of the design were not consistent with the OTR zone district, even though it complied with all the dimensional requirements, height, setback area. The design also complied with the supplemental OTR requirements, such as sidewall height and facade design, that were woven into the UDC to try to make new development compatible with Old Town. So my permit was denied and revoked, even though the board had the option to approve the conditions, or approve with conditions, I'm sorry. And here's a little bit from a letter I wrote to the Janet Buck and John Plano. In light of the recent decision by the P&Z acting as the Board of Adjustment to reverse the decision to issue my building permit, I'm writing to seek a fair and equitable resolution of this matter. I submitted my permit application in transparency and good faith. I responded to all requests for corrections or more information. I relied on representations made during the permit process to pursue structural engineering, soils engineering, and more detailed design. When my permit was approved on March 11th, I was informed that the plans have been reviewed to the currently adopted codes in Carbondale. The permit was subsequently appealed and revoked for perceived deficiencies that were claimed to have been overlooked by the building and planning departments during the permit process. I'm requesting actions within the building permit process that would remedy the oversights, errors, and omissions that rendered my permit vulnerable to appeal. I've paid the required permit review fees, and I feel that I'm entitled to a permit that would withstand appeal and allow me to build something complying with the code. The continued permit process that I'm requesting could request corrections if required, with references to specific code requirements as appropriate. The goal would be reissuance of a permit for a revised design. And I fully appreciate the complexity of the code and the difficulty of interpreting the code in ways that will satisfy all parties involved. However, it's not reasonable to expect me to bear an inappropriate share of the burden for flaws in the building permit and appeal processes. And then that's from that letter. I've also submitted an appeal of the Board of Adjustment decision and a request for hearing before the Board of Trustees. I believe the improper referral of the May 11th hearing to the P&Z and the language in the UDC allow an appeal before the Board of Trustees. And, part of this process is the neighbors and the hearing have sort of painted me as this suspect character of questionable motives, when in fact I've submitted to a public review process for a permit, and now here I am after all that time, effort, and expense with basically nothing other than maybe some bad will with the neighbors. So I think on a number of levels, things need to be addressed, and I'm asking you to do the right thing, and I trust your support.
Thank you, Pat. So it sounds like what you're requesting is an appeal to the Board of Trustees for the Board of Appeals decision.
That would be one way to go. Yes, that would be ideal.
Mark, will you weigh in on that?
Sure, and I've had a substantial dialogue in writing with Pat about this issue. First of all, I think that in my experience working with local government, that there was a very thoughtful and fair process that ensued. If there's any questions about that, that there was a equal time given to both sides. There was a schedule set out for providing written statements and then ultimately to provide oral testimony to the Board of Adjustment. Et cetera. And at the end of the day, there was a decision made, and the decision was unanimous. It was not 100% opposed to Pat. In fact, in my view, and I told his lawyer this, that he prevailed on arguably the more major issue, which is whether a large house with 3 separate entrances would be a boarding house or a residence. And the Board of Adjustment ruled in his favor that despite the way it was designed, there was no confirmation that it wouldn't be used as a single-family residence, so that was more of a use issue that would be determined in the future, not something that would borrow a permit now. Having said that, they also ruled against Pat on 2 issues, one being that the house, in their view, did not comply with the OTR design criteria, basically that it was one large box without the variation that you see historically. Most of the older houses have multiple boxes. And they also found that the landscape plan that's required was not submitted, and that the solar shading plan that was required was not submitted. And for those reasons, they reversed the permit. Since that time, I've had, like I said, additional dialogue with Pat and his attorney, requesting additional hearing before you. It's my view that the UDC and the code before it were fairly clear that the Board of Adjustment's the final say on this, and that's very typical. State statutes for all state towns and cities that aren't home rule provide just that the Board of Adjustment makes the decision, and if you don't like the Board of Adjustment decision, however, you're not stuck. If you want to appeal it further, you can take it to the Garfield County District Court, which obviously is a legal proceeding that isn't simple, but it is pursued by some folks, and it doesn't require a lawyer if you don't want to have a lawyer. And you can proceed to have a judge take a second guess at it. But that's the appeal process from here. It's not an appeal to the Board of Trustees, in my opinion. So I've laid that out. And then lastly, I guess the other point would be is, and I've discussed this with his lawyer as well, which is that it would seem to me that with some changes to the design, that there's a fairly clear path forward. And that he just mentioned conditions being placed on some future approval or permit. I think that could also simply be dealt with in the redesign. If there are questions of fees, it's my understanding that the great majority of the fees were escrowed and are now in a position to be returned to him, with the one exception being the plan check fee, because John Plano has a fair amount of time in obviously checking the plans that were reviewed to date. I think that's about $1,400. But the town, of course, also has extensive expense in this process, for my time, among other things. So it is what it is. It's a hard situation, but, the Board of Adjustment didn't issue a one-sided ruling, and there are a couple different paths forward, either court, if you really want to challenge that, or some tweaks to the design coming back in on a new permit application with all the fees being applicable to that, except for the plan check fee, as I understand it. And Jay, correct me if I've mischaracterized that, so.
That's my understanding.
That was my position.
Okay, so obviously a complicated issue. It's been through the process. Mark's weighed in on what he believes the formal process is. I think for something like this, it would take, for me personally, I would have to have some evidence that the process was incorrect, unfair, or different than what it's laid out in the code. But I would ask the board, and so I don't, we're not going to make a decision tonight whether or not we would allow an appeal, but we can decide whether or not we want to have a meeting to discuss whether or not we would allow an appeal process to go forward, because I think it's complex enough that that's what we would need to do if there are trustees who believe that we should have such meeting, or if we agree to just keep the process as it is right now and not allow an appeal process to go forward. That's what we'll do. Is there anybody who feels strongly about pursuing this further?
May I make one follow-up comment, or is that out of order?
You may, Pat.
Okay, so, the reason that this permit was appealable is that the planning and building departments made some decisions that the neighbors contested. So another avenue would be for those departments to provide some clear direction of what's valid, because I paid for a review, and I should have had a review that allowed me to build, but because of oversights in that process, and so that's another path to correction, just to continue this permit process and allow me, I paid plan reviewed fees, and they said it complied with all the codes, but that apparently wasn't the case. So.
I understand that's your opinion, Pat, our attorney, and I'm deferring to Mark's opinion on this, that the process was followed. So for me to consider an appeal, I would, like I said, there'd need to be some doubt, or if the Board of Appeals was a split decision, or something to that effect.
Oh, I guess what I'm arguing for is back through the permitting process.
No, I understand that.
Yeah,
but,
okay.
So is there any trustee who'd like to champion this forward?
I have a clarifying question for
it.
Mark. So if he were to go back and do a redesign, is it a whole new permit that is separate from the appeal process?
Yeah, it's a do-over. There's no bar on, he can apply tomorrow. And like I said, almost all the fees could be reapplied to that second permit, with the exception of the $1,400.
Sure, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
One more thing is, this, like every other land use thing we do, is a quasi-judicial proceeding, and there were lots of folks who appealed, and they're not here. And in order for your board to even consider it further, we need to think about the due process there. And there is no process in the code for the Board of Trustees to schedule a public hearing to reevaluate the Board of Adjustment. We would be inventing it as we go.
Right.
But clearly, anything you do, you would need to be in full view of all parties who are interested, not just Pat.
Yeah. So, Pat, I'm empathetic with the process you've gone through. I know it's been a long process, but like I said, I haven't heard anything or read anything that leads me to believe that our process isn't as the code outlines it, and I'm sorry you have to suffer the consequences, but right now, it doesn't look like the board is willing to consider an appeal, so I'm sorry.
Okay, well, thank you.
Yep. Thanks for coming tonight, Pat. Is there anyone else who'd like to address the board on an issue that's not on the agenda? Just if you would state your name.
Yes, good evening. My name is Mark
and your
Smith.
Address.
1187 Gore Trail, Cordillera, Colorado. I'm the CEO of Tumbleweed. I was here not too long ago. And I just am hopefully just going to respectfully ask that the board look at the signage criteria as it pertains to the marijuana business. And I went in for the signage application, and much to my dismay, I didn't do enough due diligence on the front end. I found out that in a commercial zone, like I thought the building was, which it is 50 square feet for a monument sign and 70 square feet for a building sign. 50, 70. The marijuana, there's a provision I didn't know about. And by the way, we're opening July 1st. It's public knowledge what I spent for the license, $229,000. It's public knowledge what my permit was. We're having the baby. That's not the issue. However, I'm having the baby with the fact that I can put a 2 square foot sign on the building, 2 square feet. So I was trying to do square inches, but that's like 16 by 16, I think. So I'm hoping that, someone would have to ask for directions or something to come to the building and then find out it's a dispensary. And then as far as the monument, and as far as the building sign, there can be no building sign, just a door sign, 16 inches by 16 inches. And then also there's a restriction on the monument sign, which is 12 square feet. And I have a monument sign out front, which I was going to renovate, make stone, just like the Caldwell Banker sign. I think if you were to see what we're doing to the building, you would understand our commitment, but I can't because it's 12 square feet, and the monument sign conforms to the current commercial code, but not to the marijuana code. So I'm basically just respectfully asking that I get being treated like a second-class citizen. That's fine. I can't be treated like a commercial business, but at least look at that code and try to get me a little more current. And my proposal or suggestion would be, I've done this in other municipalities, if you made the signage a conditional use permit, so you could actually review everything, because, for instance, our sign doesn't have the word dispensary. We're not using the word. All I want is a green cross, which is kind of the ubiquitous sign for marijuana. And I want the word tumbleweed, which is the name of our business. It would all be in individually lit letters, the finest signs that are in the commercial, that are basically being built, but I can't because of the restrictions. So my proposal would be just to at least rethink it. If I can't fall in the commercial zone requirements that every other retailer does, at least let me show you what I'm doing, and you could critique it and say, I approve it or disapprove based on various things. But I'm going to be redundant here. 2 square feet on a door and 12 square feet on a monument is, it's hard to do business in today's world with that type of signage.
Thank you. It's Mark Smith, right?
It is Mark. Today.
Thank you, Mark.
Yep, you're
and
welcome.
We had asked that you come back and give us suggestions
Pretty
on
quick.
how to modify the regulations. So I appreciate you coming back and taking us up on that offer. Just to be clear, so you're requesting that we make an amendment to our codes, not a specific exemption for you. You're saying, please revisit this in the code.
Yeah, an amendment to the fact that you've taken marijuana for like a second story office type of setting, which you currently have, and put an 18 or a 16-inch sign on the door and no other signage on the building or any facility. And I'm asking that maybe you can at least look at that in more of a commercial zone, which is what it's zoned, and then I said the conditional use, you could actually review every sign for your own criteria.
Thank you. Marty.
Yeah, from what you told us when you were here for your application, You have multiple locations in multiple jurisdictions, right? And
Correct.
You've never run into this before? Is this the only time you've run into this with the signage?
Correct.
Okay, and you didn't know this going in, is what you're saying?
That's not on you, that's totally on me.
No, I'm not trying to assign blame or ask, I'm just asking to clarification. You didn't know this going in, is what you're saying?
No, I did not.
Okay.
It's actually, it's in some, I talked to the planner, or I talked to you, Kathy, and then you referred me.
We've
Yeah,
talked
it's
to
Yeah.
done by the planning department.
So just as a little background, the sign restriction's actually within our marijuana regulations, so it kind of runs parallel to the sign code. And we are looking at doing, our once-a-year update later this summer. It's not going to be timely enough to deal with Mark's issue, and so that's what I let him know, that, to talk about this sooner than the regular update to the marijuana codes would, he'd have to come forward to you and get three board members to put it on a future agenda. We did have some history in the past with some larger signage as it relates to marijuana, which actually helped this smaller amount. We did at one point end up with a larger sign on the side. At the time it was CMed, I believe, which was visible from Highway 133. It was a backlit sign up on the side of the building, and it was on the early days of retail marijuana, and it was on the side of a building which at that point was a cultivation, and the feedback was pretty significant for the town in terms of not wanting that kind of signage. Whether we overreacted when we came up with this signage plan, I will let you guys discuss that, but part of that was a reaction to that signage, which was on the side of CMed, and created some issues, particularly with our neighbors with the prep school.
All right. So it sounds like it would be pretty easy to add this to the list when we discuss all regulations. Is there anybody who feels strongly that we need to address it before that? So it'd be late summer. We're already in almost midsummer, so, okay. So it sounds like that's what we'll do, Mark.
No, that's fine.
We'll,
I appreciate that.
Yep.
No, I was just trying to get on the docket, kind of, so.
thank you for
Okay.
coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else who'd like to address the board on an issue that's not on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to trustee comments.
I don't want to disappoint.
Okay, Marty, go for it.
Okay, CPAC had its art walk around town. It was very successful. We had over 100 people. The AutoCast, the app, was very successful. And we're getting numbers of use on that are very good, and we'll continue to get those numbers. We'll give them back to you at a later date. The reception we had afterwards was, terrific. Jay isn't here, but Jay was there. There were a number of people there. We had it at the launch pad. It was very nice. The next night was First Friday, and it was typical for June, probably the biggest First Friday of the year. And awesome crowd. Let's see, Sierra Club, noted Marble Distillery for being one of the top 5 in terms of renewable energy distillers. So, you need an excuse to... I'm sorry?
I missed that.
So if you need an excuse to drink their vodka, there is zero net effect on water from their vodka.
But not necessarily on your brain.
So there's that. Sunday was the first summer music in the park. Very successful. About 300 people, I would say. Broadcast live on KDNK. I passed the hat. I challenged people to come up with money. I said I'd donate 100 to see whatever we came up with. We came up with 137. I put 100, so that's 237. So we'll be able to broadcast another one live, hopefully, Gavin. And it was great. It was great seeing all the people out there. I saw some of you out there, and I saw your kids out there. Gavin did a nice job with KDNK broadcasting. The music was great. The weather cooperated. So a good time was had by all.
Thank you, Marty, for all that effort that goes
There's
into
your
that.
update.
Yep. Anybody else? Katrina?
I, as you probably know, wasn't going to be here. I was out of town, and I wasn't supposed to be back till next week, but I have experienced some pretty significant changes in circumstances, both for myself and my family, and it is culminating to a need for me to leave Carbondale. I've really put my heart and soul into trying to make my life work here, and it's just not in the cards for myself and my kids right now. And so this position being tied to my residence in Carbondale, I'll be required to resign when I leave, which I think will be at the end of this month. So I apologize for there not being more advance notice. I didn't have very much advance notice with the circumstances that were leading up to this, but it's been an honor and an extraordinary opportunity to serve with each of you, and I feel really confident that this board represents many things that are very dear to my heart, including, especially our watershed and looking out for those groups in our community that are disadvantaged, and I really appreciate that. And it's really regrettable for me to have to step down. It's been a really enriching and amazing experience, and I wouldn't trade it for anything, but I really thank you all for working with me, and I love what we have achieved both in the previous board and this board. I really feel like this town makes extraordinary progress and is an amazing model, and I'll continue to do everything I can to support this community, and but I just as soon as possible wanted to give notice to you all and to the community, and kind of touch base on the boards that could be covered and redistributed. There's one that could maybe shift to a town staff, the local government designee, but it's also a really powerful seat at the state table for oil and gas. So that's my circumstance, and so I just wanted to bring you all up to speed.
Well, that's a big deal. Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, it's life-changing.
Sorry to hear it, but I want to thank you for your service for last board and this board.
Thanks, Marty.
So it sounds like through the end of the month, so a few more meetings?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
June 27th will be my last meeting. I think there's a meeting on that day.
I'll reserve comments for that meeting.
Thanks,
Thanks
guys.
for the notice. And anybody else after that big news? Frosty.
So I'll just jump right in on this. So a couple of things I've thought about. I wonder if our board should be more educated, or I should be more educated on the Trail to Crested Butte and the Prince Creek plan. I don't know if we want to go so far as to take a position on it, but I feel woefully undereducated on both. I don't think at this point that I would support a trail on the east side of the river going up to Crested Butte personally. So I don't know what other effects some of this would have, but I think that it should be incumbent upon our board to be educated on this, whether it's through a memo from the staff or whether it's through a work session, part discussion or whatever before. And I know the public comment on Prince Creek, I think, is end of the month, June 30, I think, right?
Which is separate.
Separate from Crested Butte. There's
Yeah,
two
yeah.
different things. Right. So yeah, I'm saying both. I think we need to kind of be educated on both. I need to be educated on both. The rest of you may be. So I don't know how we get there, but I wanted to bring that up in the trustee comments. So just for people to kind of think about it. I saw.
Are you changing the topic?
Yes, I was.
Are we still scheduled to have a work session with Picken County in September?
I believe so.
Okay, so that's right now, the plan is to have a joint meeting with the Board of County Commissioners in September for that topic.
For both.
No, I think that's just,
October 18th.
oh, October 18th.
18th,
That's,
yeah.
and it's just a trail, right? Well, I guess it's a joint work session, so we can discuss whatever.
Full work session.
Yeah.
But I emailed Jay today, but he was in the airport, so I guess I didn't realize that you didn't tell me that, but that's okay.
Don't tell you everything first.
But the Prince Creek thing, when we were at the chamber meeting the other day,
Yeah.
Darren was talking about it, and I thought, I don't know anything about this. So that's my bad, but if public comment is at the end of June and we haven't discussed it, I think shame on us. Anyhow, and maybe I missed it when I was gone. I don't know. Okay, so that's just one thing to throw out there to think about. I think I just want to say a couple of things real quick, is that I think at front page of the Aspen paper today, where they changed the license in Aspen to purchase cigarettes to 21, I think I would be all for that. I think we should look into doing that, even though Aspen's done it first. I think from the addiction standpoint and following suit with alcohol and cannabis, that we should do that. We should think about it. I was shocked today to read that only 19 states have laws against leaving children in hot cars. I was going to bring up, what do we do if we find a dog in a hot car in Carbondale? And then I read that there's only 19 states. I don't know if Colorado was one of them, but I think that's shocking to me that we've already seen kids dying in hot cars and dogs. And so I'll go back to my original question, which was going to be, if we come up on a dog in a hot car, can we break the window out in Carbondale?
I don't have the ordinance in front of me, but I think it would be prudent to call the police and have them contact the plate and the owner before we break windows, because I think we'll get a vandalism charge if we break windows. But
well, then we may want to give some thought to moving in a different direction on that. I know there's some places that have made it okay to break a window out of a car if the dog's dying inside. I'd have a hard time not doing it. Just so from that standpoint, I saw one tied up to a tree at the pizza place other night. He had wrapped himself around the tree, and I'm sure he was in the shade when it started, but the sun was going down. He was in the sun. And so that tears at my heart when things like that happen. So I would like to see us look into the hot cars, both for kids and for animals.
Jay, will you send us an email as what our ordinances say about that?
sure.
Let's figure.
And just real quick on the tobacco one, we would need to have some discussions, because not only do you forego the state's enforcement and have to do your own enforcement, but you forego the shared tobacco tax, where Aspen eating $75,000 is nothing. For us, the tobacco tax is a significant part of our budget. And that was we can get in more detail, but it was actually a statewide compromise to to move towards that shared one instead of everyone having individual taxation on tobacco products. So it's a little more complicated, but we can talk about that later.
Yeah, and I'm totally cognizant of the fact that there's a tobacco tax in there that still the price to addict 18 to 21 year olds is to be a part of that for money is I don't know.
Jay,
philosophically, I'm opposed to that.
Maybe you could forward the City of Aspen staff memo to us, so we don't need to recreate the wheel, and we can get more informed about it.
Okay.
Go ahead, Frosty.
Okay, and then two more real quick things. And I'd ask about talking in view of what with of our wind power, how much it would cost us to go to full wind power on our town utilities. And so, Jay, you were going to check with Core Clear and get back to us and let us know that what the price now would be if we wanted to take all of our town utilities to wind power.
Yeah, it was my understanding the board was going to discuss. Dan, I think you responded to that, and we were going to get some consensus on doing that. It's not just adding up kilowatt hours. It's a pretty big analysis because we have so many different rate structures.
It's just something for us to think about. We don't need to make a decision on that tonight, but I think in view of what's happening nationally and with how much we're still getting off coal-fired power in Colorado, that at least we should know what that cost is. And then we're going to roll out the Environmental Bill of Rights Thursday from 5 to 7 in this room. And I've reached out to Chamber Orchard. They're already said they're on board. We'll put the resolution up, and all of our town committees. So I would like to, anybody in the public that would like to come and give us feedback, we would love to have it. And Heather and I will be here, and Julia and Tom, and certainly all the rest of our board's invited. We'd love to have all of you here. And you never know if you're going to have 5 or 50. So hopefully we get a good turnout, and we'll report back.
You said 6 to 8?
It's 5 to 7,
5 to 7,
Thursday.
And is it just an open drop-in? Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for
Thank
doing
you.
the legwork on that, Heather and Frosty. Anybody else?
I'll just update real quick on committees and stuff. So I've been in touch with Tom Jankowski about the Garfield County Commissioner about potentially working together on this Snowmass Drive trail gap that we have, just to update you guys, because I said I'd start working on that. And he's been out of town and been busy, so we're going to try to meet this week, and I'll give you an update on that soon.
We'll be having a joint work session with them next week.
Looks like next
Little
week.
unexpectedly.
You'll be getting confirmation on that.
Okay, well, I'll try to get together with him then in the next couple of days so that we can kind of tee that up for that meeting. Thank you for that. Along those lines, the Bike Ped Trails Commission met. They had limited people there. They didn't even have a quorum this month, and they tend to, a lot of them travel during the summer and are on kind of school schedules and stuff, so they might not meet again for a couple months, which is their usual. But they started a discussion of sharrows and signage, with kind of the ultimate goal being making that stuff more consistent around town. That there's kind of, right now it feels to a lot of the members of that commission that there's a bike route sign kind of randomly on some street that doesn't necessarily align with anything else, and then there's a sharrow somewhere, and to make it really clear, like more clear and consistent. So just so you know, that's kind of the direction that they're headed in. And if you have any thoughts on that, I'd be happy to take them outside the meeting and take them back to them. And then following up on the last meeting we had, where Angela, is it Lowry, presented from the Blue Lake Preschool. I met with her just on next steps to kind of basically answer the question, what support would they like from the town? What would be ideal? Obviously, finances are limited and all that. She had some interesting thoughts. She's an architect about zoning and parking and things that make it really cost prohibitive for a daycare to work. And really limit their options as far as places to go. So we kind of honed in on that as something that they can, she is looking into kind of forming a bit of a early childhood education coalition in town with the various providers, so it's not just about Blue Lake. So what we agreed on was that she would work on that a little bit, put together kind of a, here's how we think that the town can help forward the general goal of having accessible childcare in town for all kinds of people. And then she and I will meet again, and then we'll see when it makes sense to put it on a work session. So those things are all kind of moving along. And Frosty, just to update you on the, without getting into any details, but that Picken County stuff, they have actually been really good about connecting with our Bike Ped Trails Commission. They came in and did a little presentation about the Prince Creek plan. That commission was really supportive of that. And then we had the open house here on the trail up to Crested Butte. And a lot of us from that commission attended that. That was about 2 months ago now. After that, I went onto their website, made some comments just as an individual, and subscribed to their email updates. And I recommend doing that. It's a really good way to just kind of keep it on your radar and you know what's going on. And we can talk about whether it, I think that work session sounds good. It might be, the timing might not be perfect, but they hadn't so far laid out an alignment for the trail up the Crystal in sort of the controversial section that you're talking about. I think for the most part, people can get behind the idea, but there's some details that need to be worked out with wildlife habitat and stuff like that. So they hadn't laid out that level of detail yet. It was a more general plan. So just, that's kind of where that is.
Very good idea. Thanks, Ben. Yep. Erica, Heather.
Windows are installed at the 3rd Street Center.
All right.
Big room.
All right.
That's great.
That's the only board that I'm on that met in the meantime. Of course, the last meeting.
Let there be light.
Yep. Yeah, it looks beautiful.
Good. Thank you. I have a few, seems like a long time ago, but Senior Matters had a great event to thank volunteers, and they were nice enough to invite me, and it was a great event, so I just wanted to thank Diane and Marty for the outreach, and John Hoffman, who was so kind to make some gifts for some volunteers. I had a great visit at Coffee with the Mayor from Barb, Liz, and Julia, 3 senior housing residents, and they came to say, we need a recycling drop-off center, and what can we do to help? And it was inspiring to revisit that issue. Kevin and I and Jason and Marty and I met about waste diversion in general, and we wanted to see how the town's RFP went with waste collection. But I was wondering if maybe you could put the feelers out to the E-Board as to whether or not they're willing to consider that issue. I'm still doing my own due diligence on some things, so I don't want to just dump it on the E-Board, but maybe ask them if they're interested in discussing waste diversion in general and as part of that, a recycling drop-off center.
Okay.
It's a big topic, but we'll just take their pulse. We had a RAFTA meeting. Unfortunately, the access control plan was delayed again. The city of Aspen wasn't ready to discuss their concerns with that plan, so it was postponed until July. The RAFTA board did support the notion of pursuing a Lono grant to purchase 8 electric buses, which is pretty exciting to me. So that'll get submitted in less than a week, and we'll see how that goes. The school district and Yancey Nickel presented an idea to redesign the intersection at 154 so that there would be a grade-separated crossing at the Rio Grande Trail.
Could you tell us 154?
154, County Road 154, which is where the new Riverview School is and FedEx in between here and Glenwood.
Thanks.
So that was exciting, and how it's going to get paid for and how it's going to happen is to be determined, but it could really improve the mobility of that area and I think improve the safety of the trail there. RAFTA agreed to commit to a 5-year commitment to WeCycle, which has been a year by year as well as commitment, as well as increase its commitment to WeCycle. So Mierta was pretty excited about that, and that I think will only help Carbondale's efforts to explore the feasibility of it coming here at some point. At RAFTA, we also discussed senior living project. That project is requesting a modification or I can't think of the word now, but they want a different access permit than what has been granted to date. And basically, we ran out of time and ran out of a quorum, so we didn't make a decision on that. So right now, that project, I think, is on hold until the RAFTA board can meet again. And then lastly, the RAFTA board is going to have a board retreat, probably not till late summer, early fall, primarily to discuss the recommendations in the ITSP, which is the long-range planning that it's doing right now. So I'll come back to the board and solicit input on those options, but there's a lot of them. So that's exciting. That's all I had. Any other comments? Thanks. Mark? Anything?
I think I've said enough tonight. Thanks.
All right. Well, we're a little bit behind schedule, so we'll keep it rolling. And looks like we have some special guests from the Rotary Club here. So we have item number 6 is a special event liquor license for the Carbondale Rotary Club. Staff's put together a good packet, so we are pretty well informed. But if you'd like to come up and make a plug for your organization and convince us to support you, that would be great.
Hi, everybody. I'm Robin Tolan. I'm the president of the club, and you know Ken Newbecker.
Yep.
And he applied for the license, and we would like you to consider to give us the license for a great party that we're having for the casino night, which raises money for local projects. We're doing the Derail Park over there with CCH and a few other partners, and we're committing about $12,000 to scholarships, so it should be a great event, and you're all invited. It'll be at the fire station.
Remind us when?
It's June 17th. It would be this Saturday.
How would somebody buy tickets to that?
You can buy them at the door, or you can come to Rotary tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock, and we have several of them.
Okay.
Or you can get them from A&B has them as well.
Great.
Or you can get them on Eventbrite.
All right.
Yeah, or we'll figure out some way to make sure you get one.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Well, thank you. Does anybody have any questions of the applicant? No?
Nope.
Okay, Marty?
Now, this is a new theme this year, right? Because past years, it's been something different.
We did the Casino Royale theme last year over here at the community center.
Okay.
But it's Wild West this year, so that's a
Okay.
little different.
A
So
little different.
come in your best Western costume, or as somebody from the Wild West.
Okay. Any comments, Kathy? Nope.
No.
Okay. Anyone like to make a motion on this? Debate it, Marty?
I'll make a motion that we approve the special use permit for the Rotary Club's special event. They do good work. They gave out bunches of scholarships. They support lots of programs, so don't see any reason not to help them raise some money.
Special event liquor license, just, you said
Yeah.
special use permit, but just.
I'm sorry, special event liquor
Okay,
license.
awesome. And you seconded it, Katrina?
Yeah.
Motion by Marty, seconded by Katrina. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. All right, good luck. Thanks for
Thank
doing
you.
that.
Thanks so much.
All right.
Appreciate it.
All right, moving on to item number 7. We have a public hearing, ordinance number 9, series of 2017, KDNK amendment to comprehensive plan and rezoning. The applicant is Robert Schultz Consulting for Carbondale Community Access Radio located at 76 South 2nd Street. Gavin, Bob, thank you. Janet, would you like to make any introduction to this?
Yes, I'll just do a quick introduction while I was
Okay.
getting ready. Okay, this is an application for rezoning a parcel from the residential high-density zone district to the historic commercial core zone district. And the rezoning would require an amendment to the comprehensive plan to remove the property from the downtown Old Town periphery designation and to put it into the downtown designation. And you're required to hold a public hearing and approve the application, deny it, or continue the public hearing. And, as you probably know, the property's on the northeast corner of Garfield Avenue and 2nd Street. And Katie, I went back in history a little. I had to talk to Gene Scholing and some other old timers, try to figure out some of the history. But basically, KDNK purchased the property from a group of nonprofits in January of 2012. And this group had purchased it from the property in 1997. And before that, it was Town Hall. And my understanding also the fire district was also in there. So KDNK is proposing to rezone the property in order to become a conforming use. And in the past, KDNK's approached us. They've been prohibited from having temporary special events because it isn't a residential zone district. And in addition, they're unable to expand the building because it's a non-conforming use within that building. And P&Z reviewed this at its April 27th meeting and unanimously recommended approval of the application. And the thought is that there have been commercial uses on the parcel since the 1980s. This would allow KDNK to have special events. And in addition, from the comp plan, the public radio station builds on the Carbondale's economic strengths to cultivate a unique role in the regional economy and enhances the town as a destination for the arts. And so I recommend approval of ordinance number 9, which was included in your packet, that approves the amendment to the comprehensive plan and the rezoning. And I'd be happy to answer any questions. And
Does the board have any questions of Janet before we let the applicant speak? Ben?
Was there anything not reflected in the minutes discussed at P&Z? I was just surprised at how brief it seemed like there was basically no discussion. Just like presentation, open public hearing, closed public hearing, motion, vote, and that's unusual.
But I think, to be honest, I think, speaking for myself, when I first started with this, I was concerned about it. And, spent some time out in the neighborhood and looking around, looking at the history. And, hopefully I tried to encapsulate that into the staff report. It was fairly lengthy with the history and how the comprehensive plan reads. So, I think the report covered it pretty well. So
So they didn't have any concerns that were voiced and not captured in the minutes?
No, and there were no members of the public there.
Okay.
From the audience.
So
which
no
was-
neighbor concerns or anything
No.
like that? And they were all noticed, it looks like they were mailed stuff and, okay. thank you. It's highly unusual.
I know.
There's always a discussion, So it's like, did somebody fall asleep or what happened?
Show that Ben is calling P&Z long-winded.
No, thorough.
Any other questions of Janet? All right, Bob, Andy, Gavin, welcome. Thank you.
Hi, Bob Schultz, representing KDNK. I'm here with Andy Korber, who is the president of the board of KDNK, and Gavin Dahl, who is a station manager. Gavin has a couple brief introductory comments.
Yeah, we did some door knocking. We notified the neighbors. We were interested in if there would be any, pushback or people thinking that was a bad idea, and really didn't encounter any hesitation from folks. I was, like you, I was kind of anticipating learning more from the process at the Planning and Zoning Commission, but my impression was that it felt like what we thought all along seemed like it played out in the commission of sort of a cleanup. Really what we want to be able to do is, within fire code limits and responsible neighborly behavior, we want to be able to have DJ meetings in our building, or have classes, or forums, or jam sessions, the basic function that I would have anticipated would have been
Legal.
normal behavior from a radio station in its building. But when I learned about the code, I thought, well, we need to try to get this right before we dive off into trying to do activities that wouldn't be conforming. So while you might be surprised, KDNK does want to conform in this case. We are sort of non-conformist in our culture.
So there are no visual aids. That's the survey that you provided us when the nonprofits bought the building. There's no development proposed. And what you see is what you get. And as Janet shared, this has never been a residential use as long as Carbondale has had zoning. And it's just been one of those anomalies. If we had it all to do over again, we would have intervened when the Main Street section of 100 block was being rezoned, or when the comp plan. It's just Gavin came in with a fresh set of eyes and said, wait a minute, we aren't up to code here, so let's get it straightened out. As Janet said, there's a portion of this that was the fire department way back in the day. It's a steel frame building underneath the brick. And then it became town hall. And until this building was built, the town gave a group of nonprofits the first chance to buy the building before it was offered to the public. The nonprofits paid market rate, but we had the first window of opportunity. There were 5 when it started. KDNK is the only remaining member of those 5 in the building. So KDNK now has the 100% of the building ownership. We'd like to be able to, as Gavin said, do the things that radio stations do with their members, and create value for our members, and have meetings and have events and things like that. Also, as Gavin said, we've been out in our neighborhood, and we have not heard concerns thus far. And the property is currently zoned residential high density, and there is property along the north, that's along Main Street, that's HCC, and there's property to the east, so that's towards Snowmass Drive, that's residential high density, just like this. The property to the south across Garfield is residential high density, and the property to the west, ironically, is residential low density, even though that's probably the densest of multifamily housing in that immediate area. As Mark Chain, I talked to Mark to try and get a little background, like Janet, just trying to understand what happened. And apparently he tried years ago to get all of the nonprofits together to do a mini PUD there. And there were just too many people involved to get that sorted out. And so it just kind of got put on the shelf. And it's probably a good thing, because we don't like those mini PUDs anymore. So the chance to zone it and change the comp plan designation probably is a lot cleaner for laying out the future. circumstances that changed, that brought about the change along Main Street seem to make sense for this property as well. If you look at the pattern of Carbondale, I think you'll find similar uses. The launch pad is a similar use in a similar location, that half block from Main Street on the east side of the intersection. Mary Matchell's property, where Crystal Glass is the same situation. If you go down to where Cool Brick Studio, it has not been rezoned, but the use itself is a similar thing. It's a commercial use there. So I think it's a continuation of a pattern that just exists in town, and it's once again making the zoning and the comp plan match what's been going on for a very long time. I think that, going back to Ben's comment, the comment was, yeah, this is cleaning up something, and so it didn't really take long because it seemed to make sense. We looked at a variety of zone districts. The HCC made the most sense in terms of the uses and not changing anything, just having the building that it is today, and the fact that there's adjacent land that is HCC, so we aren't just creating a little spot of some other commercial zoning. So all of those things combine to do something that I think is a logical cleanup item for something that we probably should have done a long time ago, but we'd like to do it now and get on the straight and narrow. So we're asking for your approval, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Bob. Andy, anything you want to add?
I think they've covered it. Thanks,
Okay,
Dan.
all right. Any questions of the applicant?
I have a comment.
Okay, we'll turn it on.
Full disclosure, my brother is the adjacent residential owner for the property. And I would have heard about it if he didn't approve of this. But I just wanted to disclose that and then just say I think it makes sense. And I think it's also seems like a pretty easy one for us to approve as well.
All right.
And I did talk to him.
I figured you did.
Because it's a public hearing, we'll go to the public before we start making comments or make a motion, but any other questions before we do that? All right, I will open up the public hearing and ask if there's anyone from the public who'd like to address the board on this issue. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to the board for comments and/or a motion. Marty?
I'll just make a comment that this seems to me just kind of cleaning things up, and some of the things you're speaking about doing, KDNK has been doing for years, and let's make it legal. DJ meetings, special events, celebrations, they've been going on for quite a while, so why don't we just make it legal?
Okay, Katrina, you had your...
Yeah, I agree that this makes sense, and I see that same pattern along Main Street where there's this sort of soft extension of the commercial public use that kind of bleeds off of Main Street a little bit, and I think that's nice. You know, you see that in 4th Street Plaza and down by the Smithy, and this too. I mean, this, you know, is actually the historic use. This is a completely public open space. I think the one concern that I have, and I think you'll easily be able to speak to it, is this change in the future when it isn't you wonderful people sitting here and all of us that have this knowledge and history of where we're at that want to come in and do a kind of development that is gigantic, for example, you know, that we're changing a zone and we're bringing it right up against the zoning, bringing it right up against residential zoning. And one of the things that has come up a couple of times under our new UDC is when we hit that margin and we come against, you know, whether it's high density and low density or high density in Old Town, and then there's a lot of contention around how those two zones can fit together in a way that makes everyone happy. So as things are now and how it'll play out in the immediate future is fine, but can you just kind of touch base on what a redevelopment would look like in the future under this new zoning and how that could work with the surrounding zoning?
Well, we don't have any redevelopment plans, so we can only speak to what could be built in the code by somebody else. One of the nice things about the UDC, I think that had some foresight to it, was there's specific conditions that apply to properties where you have a commercial property butting up against a residential property. You have a greater setback and you have a step down to the building requirement. And Janet and I were talking about this a few weeks ago, that I thought that had a lot of foresight. And we haven't used it a lot, but when Janet and I were discussing this, that was one of the things that we discussed that thought would give Forrest or somebody who lives next door some comfort that it won't be like another HCC building because it's next to a residential zone.
Sure.
It'll have to be different.
But also the HCC zone district does adjoin residential high density. It doesn't create like a new condition in that area.
Right.
Those districts abut one another. And the zoning code has considered that condition.
Because it does highlight specifically, it talks about the structure, that it can't be enlarged or moved, or, that is one of like the main points of the problem, is that it can't be changed. So I just want to make sure that, as we move forward, that we're not creating a situation where all of a sudden a giant 3-story, that we want to keep it. Not that you guys wouldn't. I know.
From a building height perspective, the residential high density and HCC are the same. What's different is when those two districts butt up against each other, the commercial, which would otherwise not have a setback, has a setback, and it has a step down when there's when needed. When it applies to the difference in scale of the two buildings.
Yeah. Well, outside of that concern, as I said, I think it makes perfect sense, and it is what is already there, and it will be, sort of bringing into the fold that all of this stuff is legitimate uses, and, this is, I think, one of the most important institutions in our community, and whatever we can do to support it is huge. So thanks for being here and taking a look and answering my questions.
I think that's an important point, because even though KDNK doesn't want to redevelop, we are changing that, but I think the way the UDC addresses the issue is pretty appropriate. So even if KDNK were to sell it, I'd be okay with it. Any other comments? I would just say thank you. I think while this benefits KDNK, it benefits the town as well, and it's not easy to come through the process, so I appreciate the effort in making it happen. Anyone want to make a motion on this?
I move to approve Ordinance Number 9, Series of 2017, approving the amendment to the comprehensive plan and the rezoning from residential high density to HCC zone district with the following recommended conditions and findings. As stated in the memo.
Thank you.
Second.
Motion by Erica, seconded by Katrina. Any last comments or questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Thank you again. Congratulations.
Thanks, you guys. Good work.
Thanks.
That's awesome.
How about we take a break after this item? Everybody good with that? It's only 7. Item number 8, Historic Garfield County Mill Levy Initiative. I see Beth and Dorothea and Matt. Welcome. Matt, do you need the over?
No, I'm
No,
not.
okay.
I'm just gonna kind of go verbal tonight.
Okay. Apropos.
Yeah. Well, hello, and thank you all for your time tonight. My name is Matt Annabelle, for the record, and I'm joined by Dorothea Ferris and Beth White. Dorothea and I are both on the board of the Mount Sopris Historic Society, and Beth is our fearless executive director. But that's our local involvement in what I'm presenting tonight. But we're actually here tonight representing Historic Garfield County, which is a grassroots effort countywide of historic preservation leaders from communities from Parachute to here that have worked on an initiative to create a property tax-based funding mechanism for historic preservation museum funding throughout Garfield County. And I've got about a 10-minute presentation just to warn you what's coming, and then I'm hopeful that you'll have some questions, and we'd love to hear your feedback on where we're at with what we've got. So, a little more background. I guess I'll jump right into the specifics. We're proposing to create a property tax-based funding source to directly support the operations of historic societies and encourage new historic preservation projects throughout the county. And the historic societies in every major community, from Carbondale to Parachute, as I said, have participated in this effort. Those organizations include the Grand Valley Historic Society in Parachute, the Rifle Heritage Center and Museum, Silt Historical Park, Newcastle Historic Society, the Glenwood Springs Historic Society, the Glenwood Railroad Museum, and finally the Mount Sopris Historic Society. And as I explained, we're here today to present our push to have this measure specifically included on the November 2017 ballot. It's something that the Garfield County Commissioners are going to consider on July 10th, 2017. They're hopefully going to make a decision that day at a public hearing we've asked them to hold. So before we dive into the details, I wanted to take a minute to thank the town for your ongoing partnership with the Mount Sopris Historic Society. That partnership has been critical in restoring and maintaining the Thompson House Museum, the jailhouse, and the historic cabin here in Carbondale. And a combination of the town's maintenance support and the generosity of the philanthropists within our community has been what's kept Mount Sopris Historic Society afloat and able to, execute our mission to this point. However, generating enough funds to operate a historic society in Garfield County has become increasingly challenging, and that's a problem not just here in Carbondale, it's from Parachute to Carbondale, and that's why this effort has taken root and why we've had members of each community participate in it. I'm sure you're all aware that in Garfield County, many nonprofits are struggling. Done a lot of stories in the paper about that recently, and the historic societies are not immune from that. And it's a challenge. Our business models incorporate. It varies from historic society to historic society, but it generally incorporates donations from philanthropists, donations from visitors to a small degree. Some of the historic societies have funding from their local municipalities, and some municipalities like Carbondale provide maintenance for the properties that we have our programs on and try to create experiences on. But we've reached the conclusion, and we're maybe a year or two late in reaching this conclusion, which is a reason for our hurry right now, that those existing funding sources aren't going to cut it. They're not generating enough revenue to keep our doors open. And, it's a constant financial struggle to keep the doors open. And that's something that we've had feedback here in Carbondale is, what is the Historic Society doing for the community right now? And we get that feedback because it's, the Thompson House is under renovation. We've got Beth part-time. We don't have, the staff to really execute creating programs and experiences that the community can benefit from. So it's really about struggling to keep the doors open, properly funding interpretive and educational programs, paying employees to coordinate your efforts and push your mission forward. And a big one, which this board may have talked about in the past, I'm not familiar, but there's a huge heritage tourism opportunity in Colorado right now, and limited funding for historic preservation is a huge impediment to tapping into that opportunity. And I'm going to talk more about that as we go through the presentations. So those are the main problems we're trying to fix here. That's the reason we've come together. We need a solution to make historic preservation viable in Garfield County. So that's the problem we're trying to solve, and solving it really requires creating a stable funding source for it. Specifically what we're looking at for funding museums and historic preservation efforts in the county. So our proposal is to create a countywide property tax that would establish a Garfield County Museum and Historic Preservation Fund and a historic Garfield County Advisory Board that would oversee it. Specifically, we're asking for a .00045 mill levy that would generate an estimated $1 million annual fund beginning with tax year 2018. And it would sunset. We've recently modified our language in the resolution to add a sunset to it for tax year 2027. And the idea would be, obviously, we'd want to have this fund in perpetuity. I don't know that that's a fair ask of the citizens of Garfield County right off the bat, but we think that within 10 years we can prove the worth of the program and seek reauthorization of it at that point. So we've added a sunset.
And Matt, just to clarify for the listening audience, $1 million countywide.
Countywide, yep, exactly. Thank you. The purpose of the fund will be twofold. First would be to directly finance the operations and programs of historic preservation organizations, largely our historic societies in each community throughout Garfield County. And second, to create a grant funding source for new historic preservation projects, things like capital improvements, museum projects, purchasing historic assets, and any other type of historic preservation effort. So we wanted to explain a little bit about how we arrived at the $1 million funding target and that .00045 mill levy amount. In your packet, there's a handout. I'm hoping that you've got it. It looks like this. It's 2 pages. It's got some details about the effort here, and one of those details is this breakdown of how the funding would be distributed. So that's a good reference for what I'm speaking about at the moment. But we wanted you to understand that we arrived at our funding target through a careful examination of the budgetary needs of historic preservation organizations throughout the county and those seeking funding. And that analysis quantified a combined need of $430,000 to cover our annual operational and programming costs. And that's for the 7 historic societies that I listed at the beginning of the presentation. Our historic preservation community has an even larger need for project funding, so we budgeted $530,000 to create a grant funding source for such projects. And lastly, we budgeted $40,000 for administration of the fund, so that would be anything from the legal fees, accounting fees, costs of setting up the fund, and then staffing the distribution and oversight of the funds. So to recap, that's $430,000 or 43% of the $1 million in direct funding for historic preservation or operations and programs. That would go directly to the historic societies. And $530,000 or 53% of the $1 million made available for grants, and $40,000 or 4% of the $1 million for fund administration. So those numbers add up to $1 million. Current Garfield County projections say that we'd need a mill levy of .00045 to get there. So that's exactly where that number comes from. So who would administer the fund? I mentioned earlier, if Garfield County citizens were to approve the measure, a new organization called the Historic Garfield County Advisory Board would be formed. That would happen immediately. The Board of County Commissioners, actually within 90 days, I think is the language in the resolution. The Board of County Commissioners would appoint 7 members to that board. There'd be 2 appointees from each commissioner district, and the last of the 7 would be an at-large member. The Historic Garfield County Board would be responsible for administering the fund and would report and serve at the pleasure of the BOCC. So a few words about who will benefit, and the whole reason we're after this. First of all, the 7 historic preservation organizations listed and they're all listed. We're all listed in the resolution at this time. We've all demonstrated a need for the funding source and actively participated in drafting the resolution. And we've proposed that our organizations would be the initial beneficiaries. But with that said, if the measure were to pass, the advisory board would be created and be immediately tasked with drafting their bylaws for fund administration. And those bylaws would include a thorough application process and review process for any organization, including the 7 drafted into the resolution, to seek funding. If they're seeking funding, they've got to meet some criteria. So in the year between the voter approval of the measure and the actual distribution of the funds, there will be ample opportunity to thoroughly vet each potential member organization with regards to its leadership, its financial integrity, the execution of interpretive and educational programming that it does, and its vision for tapping into the heritage tourism opportunity that Garfield County has. So that review process may result in changes to that initial list of organizations. We're all going to have to qualify to actually get the funds. And some may fall out and others may pop up and get those day one funds. And we thought it was very important to have that flexibility in the language to allow that to happen either day one or 5 years down the road, that if somebody's going to come along and do a better job of it, then they should get the money for it. So there may be competition, and we think that would be a good thing. It'd lead to better projects, better programs, and better services for the citizens of Garfield County, and that's really what this whole effort's all about. And moving quickly into the benefits for our citizens, for starters, I've alluded to a big economic opportunity here. Colorado Preservation Incorporated just published a study showing heritage tourism is a $7.2 billion industry just in Colorado, and it's also rapidly growing. And this is their study. I can, if it's useful, I can send along a web link through Jay, or hopefully get that in your hands that you can read the study. There are a lot of case studies of investments in historic preservation in communities throughout Colorado and how they turned that into a revenue-generating resource. So that $7.2 billion number, heritage tourism actually accounts for, this study has found that it accounts for more than half of all the tourism spending in our state, which is an incredible
Yeah, that was a shocking figure.
yeah. It's in there. And I mean, you think about skiing, you think about hunting, you think about all those things. Those visitors, the way they've interpreted that number is those visitors are utilizing historic resources as part of their visits and spending money in those experiences. And the biggest thing about that, the demographic that makes that such a big chunk of tourism spending in Colorado is that those folks tend to stay longer and they tend to spend more money. They have more resources than somebody's here that's here for a quick, recreational trip. So.
And I was just going to say, I would also say that those monies are amplified by efforts from other state organizations to also capitalize on that market. So, for example, the Colorado Tourism Office has a dedicated person and staff just to cultural heritage tourism, and with a real focus on agro-heritage tourism. So this doesn't happen in a vacuum. And to the degree that we can partner and with other organizations regionally, statewide, and obviously locally right here, this community stands to benefit from these monies, these dollars that are really untapped. I mean, we are very rich in unique Western cultural heritage asset experiences that these visitors are looking for. And those visitors are the most prized segment of the leisure travel market. Mm-hmm. And it's what people come to Colorado for. Mm-hmm. And
thank you, Beth.
Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, so, did you still have some more?
I have more to say, but feel free to interject.
Nope. Yeah, go ahead and wrap up.
Well, another stat from the study, every $1 million spent on historic preservation generates $1.03 million in additional spending and creates 14 new jobs. Those are also pretty important numbers we found in there. And obviously some communities execute their historic preservation better than others, and so there's probably some that are making significantly less than that off their investment and others that are making significantly more. And so there's obviously an opportunity there. That's what the numbers are telling us. And if you do a good job, you can come out ahead on it. So, the end of the day, our interpretation of that study is that historic preservation is a revenue and jobs generating machine. It can be. It has that potential. So we're presenting an opportunity to Garfield County, our local communities, and our citizens to tap into that opportunity. So the second big benefit to Garfield County citizens is more, I guess, near and dear to maybe many people's hearts in this room, and that's that, you know, if you think about Garfield County, we're growing and we're changing, and we all feel that. And change may be a good thing, but it also holds a danger. And that danger is the loss of our sense of place and what makes each of our communities special. The where we came from, the who we came from, our history, and our ways of life. And there's an old saying, you can't know where you're going until you know where you've been. And that's true. It's true whether out exploring the wilds, and it's true probably for all of you as you sit in board meetings. If you don't know where the board's been, you know, you don't have a good direction forward. And that's really something that we live by as historic preservationists. So historic preservation is really our best tool to keep track of that, where we came from. And it's a tool that's actually useful to protect that thing, those special places, and create and sustain more meaningful places in the future. This is really a proposal. This proposal is really an opportunity for every citizen in Garfield County to share in the protection and celebration of the who we are and the where we live. So our goal is, as I said earlier, is to put this measure in the hands of our citizens on the November 2017 Garfield County ballot. And I wanted to mention why this year. It's a simple reason, and it's the reason I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation. We're out of money, and we have been for a while. We've been piecing things together. The reality is, if we're able to pass this in 2017, it kicks in tax year 2018. The earliest funds would benefit our historic society would be early 2019. That's a ways away, and that's a pretty big bridge for us to get, but it's a challenge that I think we're all up for. We have had a lot of feedback that, you know, why don't you wait? Why don't you, you know, spend a couple of years on this? And we'd love to get all those ducks lined up. We wish we had time for that. There's a strong feeling throughout our group that we don't have time for that, and that we're going to start, our communities are going to start losing our societies within the next couple of years. So that's the reason we're pushing forward. It's not out of disrespect for any other effort. We have, in fact, we're aware of many of the other initiatives that are coming forward this year, and we'd love to work with those initiatives and you know, understand them better, and to the degree that it's possible, help each other get what's important through. But we've got to, for our organizations, we have to keep moving. So, but make no mistake, this is we see this as the watershed moment for historic preservation in Garfield County. You know, all our communities have, you know, as a board, you face this. All our communities have aging infrastructure and citizens declining or, you know, opposed to new sales tax increases. And we're all faced with finding new creative ways that'll help our communities hold on to the character that we so care about. These are challenges in Carbondale, they're challenges in Parachute, they're challenges in Rifle. Everybody's got a different character that they're trying to hold on to, but the challenge is, its root is the same. But historic preservation is really an opportunity for all those communities. We still have those assets intact that we can utilize against this problem and tap into.
Matt, I want to save a few minutes for the board comments. Are you wrapping up?
I'm on one paragraph to go.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
This is an opportunity that leverages our unique assets, our special places, memories, and ways of life while also protecting them. That's an important point. We don't have to exploit these things. We can leverage them and protect them. So the big thing, we're not here tonight. We realize we're dropping this on you tonight. We're not here to ask for support. We really wanted to just present it to the board and start the conversation about it. But we wanted to also make you all aware that the Garfield County Commissioners are going to consider this to put it on the ballot or not, July 10th, 2017 at the Garfield County Admin Building at 1 o'clock at a public hearing. we invite all of you to attend that. We welcome any questions. We'd be happy to present this to any of your different organizations that you're involved with. And with that, I'll wrap it up. We thank you for your time and consideration, and if you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer.
Thank you, Matt. And the brochure you put together was great. I thought it really presented the story really well. So nice work on that.
Thank you.
Questions? I have a couple of questions. Do you know what the combined budget is for the districts that you're talking about? What's their combined budget for 2017?
For the historic societies?
Yes, for all the historic societies.
So that's the 400, for 2017?
Yep.
That number, so the $430,000 number was a projected, this is what we'd need to do what we want to do.
Right.
The actual budgets this year were significantly lower. I want to say they were in the $250,000 to $300,000 range.
Okay, just curious.
But we consider them across the board ineffective budgets.
Sure.
Those current ones.
I'm just curious as to the scale of the change.
Yep.
And is it necessary that this advisory board report to the Board of County Commissioners, or can it stand alone? Oh, that's.
In order to get on the ballot, they have to approve it's going on the ballot.
Huh, so it could be,
No, it won't go on the ballot.
you could do a referendum, but that would be a huge effort.
So that date is important to get their
Yeah.
yes.
Right,
Yeah.
Two of them.
okay,
Well, and the county referendum authorities are much different than municipalities.
Yeah,
yeah, more difficult.
Yes,
I
much
mean,
more
just
limited.
by
Very
the
limited.
nature.
very more different.
Yes. Basically, they don't have it except a very small window.
Yeah, we've been advised that this is the commissioner approval is our window in. But was that your question, Dan, or was it about whether the advisory board has to report to the BOCC or I'm sorry.
Yeah, my question was, does it have to report? And it sounds like it does in order for it to be a
Well, we have
county.
not secured this issue being placed on the ballot, and that's our objective, and
Right.
that will be determined on July 10th. So we do need to report back to them with as much community support, be it signatures or people in attendance as possible, to try and realize that outcome.
Well, my question is, over the length of this, do you have to report to the Board of County Commissioners for spending, or can you serve as an independent organization?
There's a construct.
The established board would be the board that would make the determination of the funding.
Okay, so,
There's an
Not the
initial.
commissioners. They're trying to get away from all these groups coming every now and then saying, I need
Great.
$5,000 so I can submit a grant.
yeah, that's my question.
The proposal allows for administrative construct for the distribution of these
Okay.
monies. And part of those monies are for grants for various, people that are looking for monies to
Okay.
preserve their culture and heritage, not just historic societies that's happening now.
But we considered two paths when we started this effort, whether it would be a board that reports as an advisory board to the BOCC or creating a special district where it would be independent. And we decided to go initially at least, the advisory board route for a variety of reasons. There's talk, and the Garfield County Commissioners have actually recommended that Tom Jankowski would like to see this as a special district, independent and kind of unencumbered by the commissioners, and that's a possibility down the road. But this initial,
Okay,
we need the county's help in a way to stand up the thing, and then once it's stood up, then we could have that conversation about it being a special district.
thank you. Heather?
I'm curious about sort of the competitive approach then to the grant making, right? Because I can imagine organizations are in kind of a chicken and an egg situation, right? Of needing some funding to then get administratively and programs, things like that in place and sort of look better and get organized, but yet they're going to be challenged to compete for the monies. So why that versus something else, either completely equal or somehow equitable distribution, or right? Why the competition for?
Yeah, the competition, I think that the competition we want to build into it is to make sure that each of our organizations are staying effective and relevant. And that's more, I see the competition more around the direct funding portion, the operations funding portion. The grant funding is also going to be competitive. The reality of the grants is that I don't know that we're trying to make that competitive. It's more that projects need big chunks of money. A lot of the projects will. If it's a property acquisition or a big fix-up for a property, that will need big chunks of money at once. And we won't have an opportunity here. It's not realistic that we could make this a multi-million-dollar fund where we could distribute those sorts of monies equally for grants. So I think from year to year, there's going to have to be sort of a lineup of which project comes first. But I wouldn't call them competitive. I think it's just going to have to be a priority.
Oh, I've read it the other way around. So the operational funding is competitive?
I think it's set up to be that way, just to make sure that we've established enough money that the 7 organizations that are seeking money right now could benefit from it. But if any of them isn't effective or, has problems at a leadership level, whatever the problem is, and there's somebody else in the community that's got an idea to do it better, we want to make that a possibility, that these organizations aren't grandfathered into the thing, no matter what they do and how well they do it or not. So,
The other thing I would suggest is that this process is particularly democratic, so it allows for organizations who may have historic preservation needs, but who are not formally part of like a historic society, to apply for grants. So for example, I was speaking with the guys over at the American Legion the other day about this, and they were like, oh my gosh, we've been looking for someone like you to help us, guide us through how to apply for grants to get our building painted. And that's a historic building. That used to be our depot. Now, they are not a formal historic society, but they have those needs. And this grant part of this allows organizations like that to jockey for monies to help get those needs met. And thereby actually diversifying the pressure points on just historic societies to facilitate all the community's preservation needs. And with regards to the economic benefits to preservation that Matt has spoken to, those are real. And in the last year, the Historic Society has secured about $170,000 from a diversity of funding sources in preservation. So we're already stimulating that economy and realizing those benefits, as we are in many other ways with tourism. Historic Society is involved with the establishment of the Four Rivers Historic Alliance, which won an award from the State Historic Fund for an innovative tourist map of the region, of sites throughout the region. We also do educational programs. There's a lot that we do. I think one of the things that has occurred is that we've actually done a lot and kind of reached a point where our capacity to keep doing what we're doing has exceeded our resources. Yep. And that's really, and there has, yeah. So that is my experience, and I'm pretty experienced because I'm spearheading that. So we've done a fair amount, and as I said, we're actually kind of lacking the wherewithal to sustain what we've done. Right. And we need support.
Thank you, Beth. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Dorothea. We're a little ways past time, but so you'll come back to us, assuming the Garfield County Commissioners give you their blessing, you'll come back to us, I assume, to ask for an endorsement between now and November, and we'll have another discussion at that time.
We'd love the opportunity to do that, yeah. Okay. We do encourage anyone that would like to learn more to reach out to us. We've got a website up, historicgarfieldcounty.org. It's got a lot of information, including about all 7 historic societies on there.
I had a quick comment.
Katrina?
I just wanted to, I have a lot of knowledge and background in this just from previous years talking with Beth about this asset in our community. And one thing that, I think is maybe wise not to cover is like this, what is really at stake in this and these resources that are really rare to Colorado. I visited a theater in Leadville in middle school, and they had these hand-painted backdrops that were like 100 years old that don't exist in the East Coast because they've all rotted and deteriorated. So we have this kind of unique environment where a lot of our historical assets are uniquely preserved, and they are extremely valuable and they are expensive. And I agree with that idea that our heritage is really important to who we are now and who we are going forward. So I just wanted to share my support for this initiative in whatever way could benefit. And I think it's a really sensible way to ask for it, and that it is an ask distributed across the county that is a relatively small ask to people. I think it seems really manageable and really, really wise. So thanks for bringing it and presenting.
Yeah, and I'd just like to make one closing remark, and I'll be brief. It's my experience, and I think this is so for a lot of people, and we really think about it, is that, history, I think a lot of people think of it as passé and boring, but it's my experience that history isn't was, it isn't. It was, but it is. It's a continuous stream of events that helps shape our unique sense of place. And so many of the things that we enjoy in Carbondale are tied to our historic roots. Potato Days, Dandelion Days, Cowboy Up, the rodeo. I mean, there's kind of really no end to it, other than the things that we haven't fully explored and celebrated for lack of resources, like our youth heritage, our mining heritage, our railroad heritage, which has given us our bike paths, our land, which is so unique and attracts recreationalists. That's all unique heritage, and some of it is geographical and some of it's cultural, but it's why people come here and spend tax dollars. It's why people live here, because of some of our differentiated experiences. And it's why homeowners and retirees come here. It's tied to a lot of tax benefits and unique lifestyle benefits that we enjoy.
Thank you, Beth.
You're welcome.
Thank you all.
Thanks, you guys.
Good luck.
Less than a minute?
You gotta
Less than a minute,
I
Dorothea.
first taught in Carbondale, at Carbondale Union High School in 1959. It was the only school in town, and there wasn't much else. Carbondale has been able to maintain its historic character. And that's going to look like Willits if we're not careful.
Yeah, that's exactly.
And that's my worry. I also was on the Wheeler board when it passed the bond issue to preserve the Wheeler. It's been modified twice since that time, but it did that. The commissioners in Pitkin County gave $100,000 to the Pitkin County Art when it was going under, saying, in a year, you better have a mill levy and go out and get the money. It works. It can work. And it's amazing how people, when they know there's one funding source, can suddenly figure out a way to work together instead of competing with each other for the same grant monies. So it works. And I just hope we can find a way to do it for Garfield County. They do have an interesting history, from Ute Trail to what's going on today. And I think we need to save it. But I think Carbondale especially has done a fantastic job of preserving some historic character to the town. There was only the yellow brick school for everybody in town at the time.
Yeah.
There's a lot more now.
Nope, we're done.
I'm done.
Sorry, Beth.
Thank you
Sorry.
very much for letting me.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for your consideration, we appreciate it.
All right. We will take a 5-minute break and come back at 7:45.
Yeah, don't scare me.
expecting Core and Clear, but just have Clear.
Just me, I didn't involve them.
Okay.
You're presenting on this.
Executive. Yeah. So at the last trustee meeting that we discussed the climate action plan, there was direction from the board to have Jay and myself and Clear draft a resolution. So we had started with a draft, and then I went on a river trip, and I got back, and then we had a president make a decision, and I got really fired up and felt like we could have a resolution that was more than just saying, we adopt this climate action plan, and here's our goals. And so put this together, got some feedback from Jay. I did get feedback from Clear and Core staff as well. They made edits to it and made some changes, but wanted to present this as is. I think we have an opportunity in a resolution to share some history and where we're at on this work, because it has been so important and part of our community's history as well. And then I felt really strongly that it's an opportunity for us to capture history. We had just a historical presentation, and it was important to me personally to show that we are on the right side of history and showing that we are taking a stand on these things. We may be really small and in the scheme of world international agreements, but we can be small and mighty. And I mean, there's mayors and communities all over the country that are signing on and taking a stand and saying, you know, that this work is important. And so I think we can be, I'd like us to be one of those. I think we already are with our work on the climate action plan and putting together a environmental bill of rights. So just wanted to articulate some of that. And then there's a lot, or there's a included more maybe in the therefore be it resolved section of just making, you know, adopting the Garfield Clean Energy Action Plan as well and those goals, and then doing what we can to urge others to take action. So.
Thank you.
Intro.
Quick question.
Yes.
Did we or did we not decide to also include as a goal 100% renewable energy by 2050, or did we just decide on carbon neutrality?
My understanding was we.
Carbon neutrality.
Just carbon neutrality? Okay.
Oh, I thought it was 100%.
It's listed in the table I was just looking at in the climate action plan as 100% renewable sources by 2050.
Yeah, that's what I thought, because we were kind of talking about whether it should be 80 or 100, and.
Okay.
But I thought it was only carbon. Not necessarily
carbon
that it was, you know what I mean? That it was 100% reduction, but not necessarily 100% renewable.
Oh,
I just read it. I'll have to get back to the page.
I think, I mean, to achieve carbon emissions, you need, you know, reduction in usage and renewables at the table. So it could be included, certainly, as an additional.
Well, if it's in the
mention.
plan, then it is.
Yeah.
So, and
Yeah.
sometimes we think everybody in the world's going to read our resolutions, and I thought it'd be good, but
They're not.
probably not.
This would be, look at this
though.
crowd.
Everyone.
Kevin and Will.
Will's going to. Okay.
Yeah, that's on page 152 of the packet.
100% reduction.
Target 100% renewable energy sources.
So the other thing in here is that we sign on to the mayor's national climate agenda, which I read and I didn't have any problems with. And then, I don't know if it came sooner than today, but Jay forwarded an email from the Mountain Pact requesting that we sign the We Are In pledge, which is essentially individuals, municipalities, local governments signing a pledge that we're in, we support Paris climate agreements. So that's something else we could consider as part of this.
Cool.
So.
Yeah, and I wasn't exactly sure where that
And-
stood, so.
And just to clarify, we probably need to amend the title just to say it's also adopting the climate action
Yes.
plan. We put the targets, but left it out of the title. That was my omission.
Yeah, good call.
That's why she sent it to me to
It's like, make this perfect.
to edit, and I missed that. So Kathy just jerked in my ear.
But just saying.
Reminded me, not jerked. Sorry, reminded me, I missed it.
Okay. Questions, comments? Heather, then Frosty.
I really appreciated, even in the resolution, the recognition and like documentation of some of the things that we had talked about in the climate action plan, as far as recognizing benefits beyond maybe addressing kind of all aspects of how people approach this issue, right? So economic benefits to how much we spend on energy and when we can save money. This is what it looks like to the town, to the citizens, to everyone. So, I really appreciated how the resolution brought a lot of those things that we had talked about together. We're not, I guess, at the kind of the poster version yet, but I think that this did a really good job of encapsulating some of those things where there are the talking points to be able to set aside some of the controversy and find common ground around the climate action plan. And I think that that's really important in this community where there can be diversity of opinion on all aspects, from causality to what people think the impacts are going to be. And there's things in here about being resilient. There's things in here about saving money. There's things in here that I feel like at least the vast majority of people can get behind some aspect of what this represents. And so I really liked how that all kind of came together in this.
Thank you. Frosty?
Yeah, and I really think this is well done. I mean, I think I missed the meeting. I was out of town when y'all talked about it the first time. So, I like the fact that you circle back and get the waste reduction recycle in here. The article in the Denver Post yesterday on Aurora on the e-waste. Did you see that? That they had to stop the e-waste pickup because they got so far behind. They had so much e-waste coming in Aurora that they had to shut it down. They've spent, I don't know, 4 or 5 times as much money as they'd allocated to get and still had people bringing waste in. And I really do think we're reaching critical mass on a lot of our environmental issues. And so it's important that we do what we can. So I like that part. And, I'm good with 2040, not 2050, just to put that out there.
You missed the meeting for us. You missed the boat.
You were in Africa.
Put my 2 cents worth in, and what about the Commercial Green Building Code?
Right, acknowledging it?
It's not there, is it? Because the only reason I would know that is because that when we passed that, it was between the proposals of the city markets. So we were the first, Jay, right? Weren't we? We were the first.
We were one of the early ones. Yeah.
Huh?
Early.
What?
We were one of the early ones to adopt
I think we were the first on the Western Slope because we had a gentleman come in that did it all over the state, and he came and talked at our board because we were going to be the first community on the West Slope to pick up the Commercial Green Building Code. So that would have been in 13 or 14, I think. So I'm going to stick that in there.
Yep.
So what did y'all say? Everybody said 2050 and said, we're good, it's good, Frosty's not here because he might have wanted 2030.
100%. We went 100%, but we left at 2050.
Okay. All right, good. I'm good. I just wanted to tell you what happened.
Frosty, just so you know, since you weren't here, I started out at the 80% at 2050 and then went to 100%.
Well, that's good. And you've quit using, well, I don't know about, I'm almost rather using that plastic water bottle and drinking that big Diet Coke.
But I want you to know there's unsweetened iced tea, sir. I don't drink diet sodas.
All right, we're good. Now we can just get Janet off the single-use plastic.
I just wanted to thank Erica because one of the things that I saw that I liked, I asked that we gave recognition for where we were coming from. And I saw that in there, because we had a lot of businesses and individuals, and through the efforts of CORE and CLEAR, we've come a long way. Obviously, we still have a long way to go. And while I don't consider myself a tree hugger by any means, Forrest and I have had this discussion. I'm not too worried about Paris or Pittsburgh. I'm worried about the whole damn planet. So I think this is addresses it. I think we also people need to think whether they're hunters, whether they're fishermen, whether they like to golf, tennis, whatever they like to do, garden. If you want water to drink and if you want air to breathe, you need to be concerned. So, and I think this conveys that very well.
Thank you, Marty. Other comments? Ben?
My only question would just be about the different plans that we're signing on to and aligning with and sort of adopting here. Whether there's any, like, what do you call it?
Dilution?
Just where they conflict, rather. Like, the Garfield County Energy one was the hardest one for me to understand. I had to read it a few times because it's got a lot of numbers in a paragraph form there. To achieve 20% increase in energy efficiency by 2030 and achieve between 30 to 50, I'm looking in the whereas, or the that statements on the be it resolved on page 128. Page 128. So this is just in the resolution. And I'm not picking it apart, so you know, we're kind of saying, we're on this mayor's plan, and we're on the Paris plan, and we're on the Garfield County plan, and here's our climate plan. At some point, I feel like some board is going to be like, wait, these plans all say a different target by this year, so which one is it? Is it that we adopt the most aggressive of those and the rest sort of fade into the background? Like, are they all lined up perfectly? I just want to clarify that. It seems like the Garfield County one, if anything, is probably the weakest of those, and I don't say that in a negative way, but like as far as its targets, ours, I think, and the Paris one are like more aggressive. So I guess in a way, I don't even know why we need that. Like, I just want to make sure that all four of those plans are saying exactly the same thing on the targets. Otherwise, there will be confusion 10 years from now when none of us are sitting here over what the target is.
Well, I mean, there's the two targets that you talk about, the Excel plan versus ours, but I think they've been integrated. With respect to the mayor's national climate agenda, we wouldn't be adopting a goal. We're just simply stating that we would do pretty much everything we've done already, with the exception of it requires us to do a biannual greenhouse gas inventory, which has a cost to it. So that is something I think we need to discuss if we decide to do that. And I think we should do that by a separate motion. And then the We Are In pledge simply says, it's basically a statement to me, but it does say that we would adhere to the Paris Climate Agreement, which I haven't read, so I'm not comfortable signing on to that until I at least read that. So we're not committing to targets in those two.
Okay.
By signing on to those two.
Because I think we based a lot of our targets off of those big things, and that's where the number 2050 came from, was we were saying, let's base it on the current science and the kind of big, like, international agreements so that we're in line with those. But I think they were the 80% by 2050, and then we made ours more aggressive and said 100% by 2050. And then it just seems like at least the Garfield County one might fall short of that a little bit, and I just don't want it to conflict.
I agree. When I was typing that, we did try, I think, in the goal section, or we were going to include, because one of the things the board had talked about is how 2050 is a really long way off. And the Garfield Clean Energy Action Plan, which is only building energy use. It actually doesn't touch on transportation at this time because it was Excel. It was funded by Excel Energy. And it doesn't include waste or local food. So it's not a climate plan. It's an energy action plan, really a building energy action plan, we should call it. And as I recall, folks on this board were a little bit more comfortable with that, a 2030 goal as well, as an interim goal to getting to 2050. So when I included it here, that's partly what I was thinking about, was rather than coming up with a 2030 goal for this board of saying, well, there's this plan, we're a member of GCE, GCE has adopted it, we could include it here as us signing on to it, or a formal signing on to it. They, because they were drafted by similar people, they're very much have similar.
Okay. I don't have a problem with it
strategies.
being in there. I just want to make sure that it's not like, well, this one says 80% by this year, and this one says 100% by this year, so which one is it?
Yeah.
But if you can, vouch for them that they're in line and that there won't be any confusion over the goals at some point in the future. I mean, it seems like ultimately the goals are really laid out explicitly in our climate action plan. And that's the attachment here. And that's been my focus more than the resolution, actually. I just want to make sure that that's the right place to focus and that there's not any confusion.
Yeah. Okay. And on the Mayor's National Climate Agenda, I guess part of my motivation there was seeing other communities signing on to that and wanting Carbondale to be on that list.
Yeah, and I agree with all of that, absolutely.
Katrina.
I just wanted to thank you, Erica, and all of the work that you've put in on this. I know you were spearheading it a lot of the way through, and I really think it is profoundly progressive. I really do think we're setting the bar really high, and every time Carbondale does that, I think it has an effect on surrounding communities locally and beyond. And I think we really have touched on so many really important things. I love the historical tie-in. I love the geographic context. I feel really, really good about this. And in terms of the compatibility of the plans, I think the Garfield County one, for example, is 50% reduction by 2050. Is that right? Something like that. But since that's like a bigger net, R100 still fits into Garfield County's 50 kind of, so I don't think that they have any conflict. I feel like they're compatible and complementary. We're going to help Garfield County get to 50% by being 100%. And I feel really, really good about this. In fact, this is one of, I think, the biggest things that I've gotten to be a part of on here. And I do think, it's timely. I think what is happening nationally and internationally is really intense right now, and I think us taking a leadership role is really important. And even though we're tiny, I think it is a really big impact. So I feel really good about us being a part of this and setting our goal. I feel great about us setting our goal so high. Even if we fall short, I'm going to feel awesome about what we get to. And I honestly don't think we will. Whole entire countries have already done it. So I think, and like Frosty was talking about with wind, and, I think there are some really amazing ways to make progress. So I really appreciate this and everyone's participation in this whole process. There was massive community input and involvement in this. And so I just wanted to say thanks and that I feel really awesome about it.
Thanks, Katrina. Eric, could you remember what the community, well, let me put it this way. What do you think is a budget number to do a biannual greenhouse gas emissions inventory?
Well, both Holy Cross and Excel is now doing an annual community energy report. And NREL also has some really great resources that I actually learned about at the local power workshop we put on with them, that I think make it really much easier than it has been in the past to collect that data.
Okay.
Holy Cross provides the data within 5 minutes of me asking. The other components that are in an emissions inventory that we didn't include is a thorough waste analysis and a local food, local purchasing analysis, that component. And then the transportation one was based on the Garfield County inventory that was done, that we kind of took a percentage of what we think Carbondale is responsible for of that overall, vehicle miles traveled. So that would be the tougher part to reach. The building energy part is easy.
And I read this where there's flexibility for the sake of this discussion tonight. If we just wanted to do building energy, we'd probably be meeting the intent of the mayor's national climate agenda. If we chose to do a more robust community inventory, we could. You agree?
Yeah.
Okay. So the financial impact could be minimal to them.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just had one other thing.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say I agree with Frosty that 2040 is a stronger goal.
Just put that in the record.
100 at 2040. 2018. What?
Reality just flew out the window.
Did everyone see the email from Kelly Flanagan at Excel with the statement from the CEO of Excel Energy saying they're on track to cut their emissions by 45% by 2021?
Awesome.
I mean, that's really significant.
That's huge.
Yeah, and then Holy Cross has their new CEO hired, and he's coming from NREL. He was at a efficiency exchange last year where a bunch of us met him. I mean, so I think our utilities are really, we're going to see a lot of changes accelerating even faster than they already have been, so.
But as the late Randy Udall told Excel, they did it kicking and screaming all the way.
Completely. They love to say, look what we're doing.
Right. Okay, so the other part of this is we uphold the Paris Climate Accords, and I haven't read that, so. Has anybody read that? Does everybody know what we're agreeing to do? Okay. I would suggest striking that because I don't want to commit to something when I don't know exactly what it means. I don't know how everybody else feels. I mean, it sounds great to say, yeah, we support it, but I don't know what it means.
I'd love to see it maybe come back.
It could.
Like, we
Yep.
could all read it and
Yep.
then agree.
And
or
we could,
not.
I've read summaries of it.
we could do that by signing on to the We Are In, which
Yeah.
is what that is, but just until I
Leave it
read
out
that.
of this and then bring
Yeah.
it back with the we are in.
Yeah. Okay.
Did you
Sounds
want to
good.
add the we are into this or have that as a separate?
That's the same thing. It says we're going to
Do the Paris Accord.
Paris Accords, and
Okay.
I just haven't read that.
Okay.
So,
Dan, would you make sure that like when they have these things like in Aspen, when Steve Skadron gets and talks about having people from all over the state, that little Carbondale doesn't get left out of that stuff. And didn't they do something in Basalt and in Aspen? And I told Jay I didn't. You were invited, right?
Yeah.
Did you go?
I did.
Yeah.
Okay, so but it did never mention Carbondale.
Well, we signed it. We're listed as a signer on
We
it.
were?
Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
because from the article I read, I never saw Carbondale in the
Yeah,
article.
that was,
It was almost like,
that article was talking about this mayor's national climate agenda.
okay.
So that's why we weren't in there. We were at the climate compact.
Thanks for going to
Colorado.
Yeah,
that.
or Colorado Communities Compact, which I will bring back at a later meeting, because what I did is I just agreed to bring it back to the board to agree whether we sign on to that. That one, I think, isn't as straightforward as the ones we're signing on to right now, for the whole reason of dilution. And basically, you're signing up to fund another organization, in my opinion.
Okay.
So,
All right. Well, thanks for going.
yep, yep.
I do have one edit to make in one of the whereas statements when I put this together. The Soper Sun did an excellent article on how we didn't have good information on the number of commercial buildings in Carbondale. Because we've been trying for years, and we did have somebody early on in my first days at Clear, like 7 years ago, walk around and do kind of an inventory. So I've been basing that 36% off that. But now I have a much better inventory to go off of. So I'm just going to adjust that number. Because it came out the same day that I submitted this for the packet, so.
What's the new number? Do you know?
I don't know the number of businesses that have
Oh.
participated, but now I've got new data for total,
Great.
just number of businesses, so.
So we'd be looking for a motion to adopt resolution number 5, adding that we would be adopting clean energy targets, the clean energy targets and the climate action plan. We would be modifying the commercial building statistic, and we would be removing the reference to the Paris Climate Accords. Did I miss anything there?
Adding a whereas that we're one of the first communities in the Western Slope to adopt the Green Commercial Code.
And that. Okay.
Are you doing eliminating that? What did you just say?
Modifying.
Adding a whereas statement, or adding it to one of the others, I guess, if it fits, that Carbondale was the first community on the Western Slope to adopt the Green Commercial Code.
Anybody want to make that?
So moved? Or should I not move it?
No, do it. I'll second.
I think that's fine.
Okay.
Motion by Erica, seconded by Katrina. Any other comments, questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Okay. Done.
Better than the brewery. No, just kidding.
All right. Follow that, Kevin.
Yeah, we should.
You got something exciting and
We should have told the
inspiring
Rockport
for us?
Brewery they were on the agenda.
I was always under the impression that the last act of the night was the headliner, but I'm guessing I'm wrong in this case.
Climate action and water rates, people don't care.
All right, so tonight, we've had discussions on this topic 2 or 3 times, but tonight we would be adopting Resolution Number 6, Series of 2017, amending Appendix A of the Municipal Code, and Ordinance Number 10, Series of 2017, amending Section 13-3-30 of the Municipal Code, essentially adopting new water tap fees as well as water and wastewater rates. So, take it away. Water, just water.
Just
No,
water.
no, water and
Yeah,
wastewater.
no, it's exactly what you just described, you know.
Right.
We started this discussion in December, had another meeting in March, had another meeting in May, and I think through that, we've, at the staff level, heard the consensus of the board. And basically what's presented tonight is an accumulation of the comments through those 3 meetings. The ordinance adjusts the tap fees because they are included in the body of the code. The resolution adjusts Appendix A, which that's why you have an ordinance and a resolution, is because they're in 2 separate places in the code. The memo outlines the current and proposed fees for July 1st, if these, the ordinance and resolution are adopted. You know, I think the important part in this is the fiscal analysis. What it does is it puts us on track to get back to the 3% increase covering what we need to cover for the long term, and getting away from the bounces that we've seen historically where we keep rates artificially low while costs increase, and then we have this aha moment and you bump them back up, and then I think that 3% is sustainable and doable, and it looks like from all the financial analysis we've done that that'll get us to the point in time where we're 100% renewable.
Kevin, let me interrupt real quick. Is that referenced in the letter? Like the fact that we have a 5-year plan to get back to us? It is good. Okay.
Yes.
You mind bringing everybody up to speed with the idea of the letter and the handout?
Yeah, we can now.
Oh, yeah, I don't mean to put it out of order, so finish.
No, that's fine. I think we've all discussed this. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions that anybody has at this point. But, you know, some of the feedback we got at the last meeting was to make sure that we figured out a way to get this information out to the public. And what we did was kind of take a 2-phased approach. One, and they're both will be inserts in the utility bills. One's a more detailed letter format, kind of explaining fixed versus variable costs and how those correlate to base fees and usage fees. And then that letter also has the new rates on the back, just like they're in the memo. The other thing is more a general water, you know, facts about our water system, facts about our wastewater system that include, you know, the 40 miles of pipe, the 22 miles of pipe, $34 million for water replacement, $26 million for wastewater replacement. And I will qualify this as this is something that Jay has not been able to review yet because we just got it done Monday. That's why it's not in the packet. But our intent would be to get that out in the utility bills and also have links to the information that we discussed through this process on the website. That's in the letter as well.
Okay. So just as a point of clarification, the resolution for the water rates and wastewater rates would go in effect July 1st, which would mean the August billing cycle is when they would hit. The ordinance for the tap fees would go in effect approximately on July 22nd because it's 30 days after publication. So that wouldn't go into effect exactly on the 1st of July. It would be and the way the ordinance is written, it's basically upon publication and how our municipal code is written.
Okay. And that's all fine legally, that the ordinance doesn't go into effect
Yeah.
until after the rate increase?
No, the ordinance does go into effect, is for the tap fees, and that doesn't go into effect until it's published, but that's how it's legally set up.
You could set a date in the future after that if you want it to be October 1st or whatever. You could pick a date, but the earliest we can do it is when the ordinance is effective. That's what it says now.
Our original goal would have been to have it effective July 1st at the same time. It's just the publication schedule.
For what it's worth, I've only heard one comment from a citizen, and when I explained the process we went through, the analysis Kevin did, and that we evaluated, and we discussed alternatives to raising the rates to a certain rate. He was planning to come to this meeting, and I said, have at it, but here's what we've done. And at the end, he's planning to build a house, and he was most upset about the tap fee. He kind of agreed that, okay, it sounds like you've done your homework. I would prefer you not to raise the tap fees, but I appreciate the homework. So that was good, I thought. So I don't know if anybody else has heard from anybody, but doesn't necessarily mean there's no opposition.
No, after it's passed, we'll hear from everyone, but
After the bills are out.
that's a separate story.
August meeting.
But I also think the fact that we've done this over the course of 3 meetings over the course of 6 to 9 months, we've had, and yes, it is just the notification we do in the paper and otherwise, but we've allowed people to come and speak about it. So I feel good about the process.
Mm-hmm.
Katrina.
I just wanted to say I really appreciated the graduated increase up the quantity use. I think water is a human right, and I like the idea of universal access, but also balancing it with the fact that we have to provide the infrastructure for it. That's part of our job here, and this feels gentle. It doesn't feel like we are going to be smacking down people who aren't able to afford this, and I just really appreciate the way that it kind of played out in a way that I feel like it's fairly equitable for everyone. So thanks.
Kathy?
Can I ask a question as a citizen?
No. Next question.
So I pay my bill by credit card. So how, if I wasn't in the know sitting here, how would I know what is happening if I didn't read the newspaper? I mean, so if you get a paper bill, you're getting that in your face, but is it going to be on the electronic version that please note that there's increases and then see the website or something like that? Because it's pretty generic, the bill that I receive. It doesn't give me any information every month on things. It's just, something to think about.
That's a great point.
We can look at the availability that software has to add notes, and, I doubt that we're gonna have the ability to attach something like this to it, but we could definitely point people in the right direction. We can have this on the website too,
Yeah, I think that's great.
Yeah, I would agree. I was thinking the exact same thing, so I'm glad you brought it up. And I think whatever you put in that, if there's a way to hyperlink it where they can click and go to it, don't put a big long URL that people have to type in. Like, it should be really easy to get from that email to the full report that a person in the mail got, unless it's totally impossible and through the software. But I would think that there's a box that we can put information in that software.
Okay.
Yeah, Marty.
And just in the letter or the explanation, are you going to go over how instead of 3% increase over the last, 8, 9 years, we've had a small increase of 1.5%, to explain the rationale that we used to get to this place?
That's incorporated into the letter already.
Yeah, no, I
Yep.
think it's good, because I think if people understand that, no one likes to pay more money than they have to for anything. But if people understand the logic behind it and the fact that they always get a bargain with their water, but they got more of a bargain for the last 8, 9 years, and now we're kind of playing catch up. If we can get that across them, I think they might be more accepting.
Other questions? Comments? Motion? There's a motion on a recommended motion on page 171, the bottom of page 171.
I'll do that. I move to adopt resolution number 6, series of 2017, amending Appendix A of the Carbondale Municipal Code, and ordinance number 10, series of 2017, amending section 13-3-30 of the Carbondale Municipal Code.
Second.
Motion by Marty, seconded by Heather. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say no. All right. Nice job, Kevin. Jay.
Thanks, guys.
A little less enthusiastic than the climate action plan.
That's not even me.
I didn't want you to feel left out.
Okay.
We need water.
Any other comments on the advisory board or correspondence?
Or just real quick, next week is our joint meeting with the county commissioners. For those of you who haven't attended those, it's normally in this room. We do some light food with the commissioners, usually feed them too. It's the one meeting a year that you get to eat at. If there's any specific topics that you'd like on that agenda, give me a call tomorrow or just email me tomorrow. So far, I've proposed to Kevin that we talk about the Snowmass Drive Trail, any other joint projects coming down the line, common financial issues we're facing, since they're going to come up with some of their challenges. We obviously have some similar ones, road and bridge funding issues, and that's kind of the general ones that I have so far. So anything else, just let me know and I'll toss it on there.
Well, so I'll miss that meeting. So Frosty, you're ready to chair that work session.
Oh, boy.
Have at it.
I would. It's kind of co-chaired between Frosty and John Martin.
That's true. That's true. I would ask that we specifically ask them to do what they did in 2017 and 2018 and make us whole for the road and bridge mill levy. I would like to formally request that in a public meeting.
So you probably need to coach me a little bit for that meeting. Yeah.
Heather.
The multi-jurisdictional housing,
Yep, we'll throw that on there.
I think would be a great one. I'll be meeting with Bill this Friday. Final resolution, hopefully, or final version of the RFP, that'll be going out, and I think he's gone before then. That was still on the docket the last time we met, and I'm not sure if he has, so. I just think that'll be a really interesting one to throw out there.
Okay. I was going to mention that as well. Thank you for keeping that on that discussion. You know, another topic that I just think about with the county now and then, this probably is not the time to talk about it because we haven't, but just to maybe put it on all of our minds, is just the idea of we have so little security that the open space surrounding Carbondale that really makes Carbondale feel so great. You know, the Catherine Store bottomlands and all that. Like, we have very little security that that's going to be preserved as open space. There's kind of conservation easements here or there and wealthy landowners here or there and that kind of stuff. And when we went through the whole comprehensive plan, that was always a big discussion. And I just wonder if that's something that we want to come back to at some point. Our tools are very limited. It's a very difficult thing. But I just have this feeling that one day some developer is going to come in with a pretty big residential proposal sort of right on our border and cite all the things that we have in our comp plan and UDC about encouraging density in town and development close to town, and basically make the claim that this, you know, is helping us accomplish those goals by expanding our town or doing a county zoning, you know, sort of right on the edge of town into some of this beautiful open ranch land. And I know the county doesn't have any sort of open space policy or program or funding or anything like that either, but it's probably not the time to bring that up because it's a very open topic with, I don't have any kind of proposal or anything like that, but I feel like that's off of all of our radar right now. And it was on our radar as a town years ago, and I just have a feeling that it's going to come back on our radar a little too late at some point when some big proposal comes up.
Well, and I also think that's why it's really important that we honor our current moratorium on water and sewer taps outside our boundaries, and that we manage our utilities really carefully, because anything of any density is going to need our support if it's an immediate neighbor to us.
Okay.
And I wouldn't say that's off my radar at all. It's just been off my radar to do anything about it. And I would prefer to start with a work session with, say, an AVLT before I even think about talking to Garfield
Right.
County.
That's why
Yeah.
I only mention it right now because we're thinking about the county for a moment, and we have a moment to like put something out there, but I'm not suggesting that it's something that we talk about next week.
Yeah.
One that would be interesting is sort of recognizing the 40-acre proposal, right, of out by, on your way to Thunder River.
Bear Chase, or I don't know what the
parcel, right. I would like to acknowledge that P and Z, the commissioners, I mean, their sort of support of denying that proposal. I mean, I think it's one of those times where we were pretty adamant, couldn't have been more adamant, you know, and there was a lot of support in that direction. So that's a good one to maybe just like begin the conversation now by kind of acknowledging everybody was on the same page.
Yeah.
And then let that be the entree to kind of continuing a land use discussion maybe after we have a little more clarity or some other people on board, that kind of thing.
Are you referring to the Cattle Creek project? Yeah, this goes by a bunch of different names, but.
Whatever it was named, you know, 40 acres, it was the same
Well, there's-
engineers, you know, as
So, you know, I think it'd be
Senior
great to
Wade.
just ask the commissioners an update on where they see that project coming and reaffirm our concern on it. You know, last time it was in front of them, it was a 2-1 vote to deny it. And if it wasn't for the testimony of the mayor at the time, I think it would have gone 2-1 the other way for approval. It was a very close discussion with actually one of the commissioners literally scolding municipalities for not growing more within our boundaries, and that's why they were going to allow such things outside our boundaries.
Yeah.
It was a pretty intense meeting.
I think along those lines, and John mentioned this a year ago, you know, suggesting that we haven't done anything to prevent growth in our towns, and you know, the UDC, you could argue, is well, I wouldn't say that, but just along those lines.
I think the UDC has provided clarity, following up on the comprehensive plan as to how we want the town to grow.
Right. That's
So-
fair. So.
Yeah, I think that's made a huge stride from probably previous conversations with them.
Because John may bring that up when we talk about this, so.
You know, in a perfect system, you've got encouragement of development where you want it and explicit discouragement of development where you don't want it. And that's where our plan ends, with encouragement of more dense development in town, but then we have no control of what's just outside town. So we're sort of in this weird situation where we're encouraging. The worry is that we'll get, you know, density and sprawl, right? Instead of density being the solution to sprawl. And I worry about that we're going to see a proposal and that we won't have any real means. So I gives me some comfort, the water tap issue. I understand that, but that might be a topic for a future
Yeah, I
work
think land
session.
use would be a great one for next week, though, and using Cattle Creek as an example, and then could just broaden it somewhat to, we've been doing a lot to figure out how to encourage it where we want it. You know, what's the stance back from the county in terms of, because I don't think you ever want to use, especially with them, discouraging.
Right.
But where do you guys stand on then encouraging it where you want it? In their comprehensive plan of Garfield County, as you look at the rural lands, it's pretty challenging because it's pretty broad brush. I mean, it could, you know, sprawl all the way to Beck, and you know, I mean, market forces aren't there to do that. But those are some of the challenges with their existing land use plans. So I think it'd be a great discussion for next week.
In talking of that development, the Raft's access control plan may come up. That's been a concern of the commissioners, that it could be, has been, or could be used as a land use tool But right now, all the jurisdictions, with the exception of Aspen, are in agreement, including Glenwood, who leans towards more access to the trail. So I think that's kind of all we can ask for at this point. So.
Great.
Cool. Katrina?
I'd love to touch base with them if there's an opportunity on reinstating the sane exam room in Valley View. Right now, there's one in Rifle, but that's just, servicing the greater area isn't really meeting the needs of this eastern side of the county, and also a detox in Glenwood Springs. I've heard some kind of conversations around it, but I would love to see that supported by the county, because right now people go up to Aspen or they go to Junction, they end up at the hospital, which is the most frequent problem, is that somebody who really belongs in a detox is in the ER, and it's just not an appropriate use for those resources either, or those staff, honestly. So I think those are a couple of community health issues that they have some influence over, and I'd love to share that that's a concern for us.
See any objections to that? Marty?
Yeah, just make one quick comment. The police department and the fire department with the river rescue the other day, with the unfortunate incident of the homeless gentleman being run over on 133, they're to be commended for the job that they did. Their professionalism in getting it done, and the river rescue especially, getting the people to safety without anyone else getting hurt. They really should be commended.
Thank you.
Yeah, that picture of that little girl on her face in the paper, her mom was doing her best to keep her calm. You could tell that she was shook, that little girl. Yeah, so that was a good job by those folks.
Anything else? All right. We're adjourned.